Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another exciting session of IIoT India Digital Connect Series. DigiCon Series is aimed at addressing the needs and challenges of the manufacturing industry in today's time and sharing the experiences and learnings within the industry. The topic for today's discussion is digital transformation paving way for new revenue streams in the auto industry, now, next, and beyond. After a challenging phase, the automotive industry is all set to make strides with new market segments, pivoting standards, and support from the government. The big question here is how all of this fits into our economy and helps generate lucrative revenues along with enhancing customer experience. Our panelists here will be sharing their experiences and learnings on how they have adopted digital transformation in their organizations. Now, without much further ado, I would like to go ahead and introduce our panelists. I want to start off with our moderator for today, Mr. Sunil David, who is the Regional Director IoT at AT&T. Mr. David has 26 years of experience in IoT, IT, telecom, and digital transformation and is working on building a partner ecosystem for AT&T in the areas of IoT devices, platforms, and applications. Thank you for joining us today. Next, we have Mr. Venkatesh Natarajan, Chief Digital Officer, Ashok Leyland. Mr. Natarajan is passionate about driving the digital transformation, leveraging IT, and deploying relevant digital technologies that benefit the business. He leads IT strategy and initiatives that align with the organization's visions and goals. Thank you for taking out time to join us today, Mr. Natarajan. Our next panelist is Mr. Arun Malhotra, an expert from the industry who for over last 3 decades has been a part of the growth of the Indian auto industry, having worked with Bajaj Auto, Maruti Suzuki, Mahindra & Mahindra, and Nissan India. Presently, he is a strategic consultant and advisor in the auto domain and independent director on the board of reputed companies. Thank you for joining us. Next, we have Mr. Arpan Srivastava on the panel. Mr. Srivastava is the head of product at Zoomcar. He leads the product management and user experience design teams at Zoomcar and is passionate about building products which customers love and enjoy on a daily basis. Thank you for joining us. Finally, we have Mr. Ravindra Barlingay, who is the Vice President R&D, Electronics, Advanced Engineering and Mobility at Endurance Technologies. Mr. Barlingay boasts of leadership roles at global Fortune 500 companies involving R&D management, digital transformation, technology, strategy, automation, and business development with a fine mix of technical insights and business acumen. It is an honor to have industry stalwarts like all of you on the panel today. I now request our audience to take a very quick poll so that our panelists know you better and can streamline the discussion accordingly. The poll is on your screens right now. So scroll along and select the most appropriate option, and please do not forget to submit your poll. While we are waiting for the audience to submit the poll, I would like to inform you that we have received an enormous number of queries from all of you present in the audience. Our panelists will address them during and after the session. You're welcome to ask more questions via the Q&A function on your screen throughout. You can also choose to upvote a question that has already been asked by someone else that will help us to prioritize. Any questions which remain unanswered can be posted to our IIoT India DigiCon Series interchange platform, the link to which will be provided towards the end of the session. So I can see that few people are still left to submit their poll. Quickly choose the correct answer and submit your poll. All right, so here is a summary of what the audience thinks of these questions around case. So 42% of our audience thinks that an all-electric powertrain yields the best performance and efficiency as compared to a 40% of vote towards petrol electric hybrid and less number of polls towards turbo diesel and small capacity direct engine turbo petrol. So looking at the results, what would you like to elaborate on it, Mr. David, so that we can continue with our discussion after that?
Yeah,
Over to you, Mr. David. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nitya. And good afternoon to all those who have joined us virtually. And a warm welcome to all my panelists. I'm not really surprised by the poll results. I think the first question is very clear that there's 42% wanting all electric. Perhaps we'll touch upon this topic when we get on to the discussion. There's definitely a push from the government towards EV, and we'll discuss that in a little more detail. Right. Should cars do away with physical buttons and only have touchscreen controls? Again, people want convenience, safety, so want easy user interface. So again, not surprised by that. I think there are a couple of questions on EV, and what we'll do is, time permitting, we'll probably have one or two of the experts share their thoughts on this, especially Arun Malhotra, because just a couple of days back, I think it was yesterday, right, Arun, that you spoke to ET about the whole EV and what should the industry be doing on this, right? So, can you present my first slide, please, Nitya? Yeah, can you all see the screen, please?
Yes, we can.
You can? First slide. So all those who have joined, first slide. Just go back to the. Yes, so at the outset, I would like to thank SingX for giving me the opportunity to moderate this virtual panel on a very, very valid topic, how digital transformation is paving the way for new revenue streams in the auto industry. And we have a fantastic set of panelists coming with a diverse set of experiences. And collectively, the total experience of all the four panelists is around 115 years. So they have a wealth of experience. And I'm really looking forward to hearing their perspective, and I'm sure all of you as well. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of the auto industry's impact to India's economy, I think the fact is that it is a big contributor to our GDP. It's today a $118 billion industry, generating a lot of employment, both direct as well as indirect. The number, the 32 million, there was another report which I read which says 37 million. So anywhere between 32 to 37 million employment being generated by the industry. We are the fifth largest auto market as of last year. And also we are accounting for almost 15% of our total tax collection. So that emphasizes the importance of the auto industry to India's economy. If the auto industry does well, then I'm sure the Indian economy also will do well, because the auto industry also impacts other adjacent industries like steel, etc. Next slide, please. Now, we have three storms on the horizon, and I kind of bucket it into three parts. One is the cyclical storm, right? So we had this 6 years of growth in the industry, right? From 2012 to 2018, we had growth in the industry. And the last 2 years, we had a degrowth. Structural storms. And I think these are to do with some of the policies that were framed in the last few years. For example, the EV policy, I think you must have read about this last year, where it is mandated that a two-wheeler with up to 150cc should be having a fully electrified bike by 2025. Three-wheelers have to be completely electric by 2023. Then, of course, we had GST in 2017, and that also did impact sale of auto, because the GST rate, I'm sure all of you would agree, is very high today, and there is the need to reduce that. The axle load norms, I think that was two years back, where the government came up with a policy where trucks could have 25% more load. Basically, to put it in simple terms, it was legalizing overloading, but that had an impact on the sale of trucks and even the freight rates. And of course, not to forget BS6. So we moved straight from BS4 to BS6. We completely avoided BS5. And of course, that had to do with the emission norms. So these are the structural kind of storms that we kind of are still going through. And it did have an impact on the industry. Now coming to transformational, and here I wanted to kind of highlight 4 very important trends. Next slide, please, Mr. Right. So I call it the case for case, connected, autonomous, shared mobility, and electrification. Now, each of these is a topic by itself. I think we can discuss connected car for maybe an hour or more, or each of these topics are very elaborate in its own right. And now we just look at the connected car industry in India. Today, I was reading a Deloitte report. As per that report, today the connected car penetration in India is very, very low. It's at 5%. And when I'm talking about connected car, it is use of infotainment systems and digital cockpits, as they call it. If you just look at globally, it's at 30%, and Japan is at 90%, which means that there is definitely an opportunity here for the auto OEMs to start offering connected cars, which will definitely be a differentiator for them compared to competition. Autonomous cars, while we are seeing a lot of testing happening in the more developed markets, from an India standpoint, I'm sure all of you all would agree that we may not ready yet. We might be seeing some use cases of autonomous vehicles in more controlled environments, but commercially using autonomous cars, I think from an infra standpoint, I don't think we're ready yet, but we'll probably talk about this during the discussion. Shared mobility, to supplement the auto industry, I think we've seen that grow a lot. Whether it is using platforms like Uber and Ola, or even Zoomcar, that of course has got impacted because of COVID-19, but there could still be potential opportunity, and we're going to hear Arpan share more on this. And finally, electrification, and this is something which is very close to the government's heart. I mean, this is very important from a government standpoint, especially as it relates to emission norms and to decarbonize. I think this is something which I think almost every auto OEM has some kind of a roadmap in terms of when they want to take their vehicles completely electric. Next slide, please. Now, just look at how the situation was before COVID, and I'm just talking about the impact of industrial IoT in manufacturing. That also includes the auto OEMs, right? So the impact was earlier, if the focus was on trying to reduce cost, driving more productivity, sustainability, and also trying to use digital transformation as a competitive advantage. Today, what we are seeing is that the whole focus of digital transformation initiatives is for the survival of the industry itself, right? Today, if you don't implement digital, your very survival is in question, right? So I think one has to look at it from that lens. If you ask me a question, should I really go and invest in digital now? We also seen some very interesting trends. We've seen, companies manufacturing, especially manufacturing companies, repurpose their production lines. And I think Ashok Leyland is an example, which also started to make ventilators, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Venkatesh. But Mahindra has also started to make ventilators. So we've seen some of these manufacturing companies repurpose their production lines. And also the focus now today is, especially when you're talking about return to workplace, and especially manufacturing, and including the auto OEMs, which is very people intensive, where you need people on the factory. You're seeing a lot of technology being used for monitoring people coming in, whether it is monitoring the temperature, using thermal scanners, whether you're using CCTV feeds to analyze that, to figure out if people are adhering to social distancing and all that stuff, right? So today, when you're talking about use cases, most of them are related to sustenance, and of course, the next phase is for growth. Next slide, Anita. Now, so on one side, we're talking about using digital transformation to drive more operational efficiency, reducing cost is very, very important. But let's look at the demand side. If you just look at the consumer mindset, that has definitely changed, right? So post-COVID, we are still in COVID, but ever since the lockdown was announced on March 25th, we're seeing some of these play out, right? So the discretionary spending has been on a pause. So maybe there might be a short-term impact of connected cars, so because there is a cost to it. Fear of using public and mass transportation. So there is that fear lurking in the mind, especially in today's situation where the number of infections are growing and we still don't have a vaccine yet. So there is that fear of visiting dealerships. And here again, you're finding companies wanting to come up with, auto OEMs come up with virtual models where they can sell online. And I think Hyundai has got a thing called click to buy. So they're trying to make it as virtual as possible. So make it easy for the consumer, so that sitting at the convenience of his home, he can just connect to a website or an app, decide what he wants, and then we even have a a test drive at the coming at his home or his office if he wants to. And one more thing that we are clearly seeing is the shift to electronic buying of essential and non-essential. I think there are a lot of people who are the first time started to use e-commerce platforms to buy stuff, right? So online behavior has changed, and this perhaps will continue in the medium to long term as well. Next slide. Now, we are definitely seeing a few green shoots emerge, and also Nitya, when she mentioned that in our opening comment, we are seeing, especially in semi-urban and rural markets, the need for personal mobility. And I think because of the COVID situation, people today want personal transport. So there could be a demand for that. And we are also started to see a lot of interest in the used car and bike sales. And while it is not resulting in significant sales, but there's a lot of interest. Perhaps that will trigger a lot more sales. But again, it boils to the fact that people want personal mobility today, right? And while we can talk about pent-up demand being served, the question is whether this demand can be sustained, and that we'll need to wait and watch out for. We're also started to see SUV sales increasing, right? So we've seen a 14% growth in July compared to last year. And July 2020, the passenger vehicle sales increased 73%. So all these are green shoots, right? So the question is whether this will sustain the demand going forward. Next slide, please. Now, given these green shoots and the fact that adopting digital is non-negotiable, again, I repeat, digital is non-negotiable, how do the auto industry generate new revenue streams in the new normal? Now, to discuss this, we have eminent panelists, and I'm going to start by first asking Mr. Venkatesh Natarajan from Ashok Leyland, who's the Chief Digital Officer. Venkatesh, good afternoon to you. And firstly, before I ask you the question, I wanted to congratulate Ashok Leyland for bagging the Frost & Sullivan 2020 GCC Light Commercial Vehicle Leadership Award for your truck, the partner. Congratulations, Venkatesh. That's fantastic.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I just read that this morning in the Economic Times. And Venkatesh, Ashok Leyland, one of the largest manufacturers of CVs, trucks, and buses in India, and I think the third largest bus manufacturer in the world, right? So my question to you, Venkatesh, is how has Ashok Leyland coped with the impact of COVID initially, when you were in the React phase? And specifically, can you highlight some digital transformation initiatives that you have put in place to improve your operational efficiency and reduce your cost? And also how you have coped with the supply chain disruption, because that was very badly affected, Venkatesh.
Yeah, thank you, Sunil. Just to get started, while we are in the COVID times now, I just go back to the school days where we were taught the basic skills were the 3 R's. So the 3 R's were reading, writing, and arithmetic. These were the 3 R's which were taught to us as the basic skills. But I think post-COVID, I think this is completely getting redefined, and the 3 R's are going to be reimagine, re-engineer, and reinvent. And this applies for all businesses and for individuals post-COVID. And on the lighter side, you must have seen in the WhatsApp, there was kind of a joke which was going around as to who led the digital transformation in the organization. Was it the CEO? Was it the CIO? Or was it COVID? I think the answer is very, very clear now. It was COVID which has significantly accelerated the digital transformation in the organizations. So as far as Ashok Leyland is concerned, I think, let me go back to the 2nd of March. That's almost 6 months ago, when I came to the office, and that happened to be a Monday. And I'm quite early to the office, and I was there in the office at 8:30 in the morning itself, but I was a very worried man. Because just the previous night, I saw a lot of news on COVID. All the news channels were talking about this. There was something which was telling me that this is going to hit us big. And I called up my head of infrastructure and operations, and he was not there in town. And I called him up and I said, there is something which is worrying me. I feel that we should be prepared for something which is going to hit us big. And so that is a time where we got together and started planning our business continuity plan. And on the 15th of March, we did a dry run in terms of how do we support this organization remotely. And incidentally, on the 19th, just about 2-3 days later, we went on a work from home. That is from the 19th of March, the entire organization, or most of the organization, went on a work from home mode. And it was a very, very seamless transition for us because we were well invested on technology. So you had most of the people had laptops, VPN connectivity, and so on. So it was a fairly smooth kind of a transition. But what I think I should highlight here is, being an automotive industry, I think we have a large engineering IT platform, which is all your CAD, your PLM systems, your simulation systems, your testing systems, all that. And you had a huge population of design engineers who had to work from home, and then enabling them, because when you access your CAD files, you require a much higher bandwidth, and more importantly, I think the security is important. So we had to ensure that security was put in place before the access was provided to them. So you had almost about more than 600-700 engineers, and even today were accessing all their CAD applications, designing 3D models and all that remotely. So that was over a period. Now it's 6 months, and things have now kind of settled down. And at the end of the day, we are a manufacturing organization. So the manufacturing and the production is also kind of started off in all the units, while you have a large chunk of the executives, the white collar guys, who all are still working from the work from home. So work from home, I guess, has settled down very well in the manufacturing industry. And moving forward, I think it only makes sense for us to kind of proliferate this culture of work from home in the future, even post COVID. So what have we done in terms of most of the organizations, I think, are going through difficult times, and volumes have shrunk and revenues are shrinking for organizations. I think this is a time for us to, as I said, reimagine, re-engineer, and reinvent. We embarked on a project called Reset. It is called Project Reset. And Project Reset is not all about just cost reduction. It is not a cost optimization, cost reduction program. No. One of the objectives is cost reduction, but it was also looking at ways and means of very, very innovative ways of how we look at improving efficiencies. And more importantly, how do you ensure that we kind of maintain the same revenues or even increase revenues? And so there's a huge kind of a program where we are kind of crowdsourcing from the organization a lot of ideas from the people and looking at what is it that can be implemented as part of Project Reset. And this is now almost about 2-3 months now into this program. And we are doing pretty well on all the key parameters and key objectives that we had set for this as part of this project. So as part of this, from a digital perspective, I think there's a huge kind of a focus on process automation and driving analytics. Not that automation and process automation was not on the top of the agenda for the organization, but I think this has got accelerated now. So there's a huge focus on looking at everything that can be automated, right? So we are looking at, especially organizations like us, we are a 72-year-old organization. There is bound to be some fat in the process. So we continuously are now looking at every process, put all the processes on the treadmill, make it run, and then make it shed fat. Because ultimately, it is very, very important that during these difficult times, we have to be agile. If you have to be agile, you have to be lean. So when I say lean, it is all about lean processes, lean people, lean technology, and everything lean, which will enable you to run much faster and change direction, more importantly, much faster. And that's precisely what we are looking at as part of the automation projects, and the whole list of projects which we have identified, which we are tracking as part of our digital transformation tracker. The second is on the analytics part, and we were fairly quite matured in terms of analytics. We have only now taken it to the next level. And we have now kind of put in place an analytics competency center, which involving even the front-end people. Because the true success of analytics is only when you get the business actually involved in it. So we have now kind of onboarded. We have not hired, we have only onboarded from the business. We call them as analytic evangelists. They are basically data scientists. Their sole responsibility is to proliferate the use of data and this overall objective of what I call it as a data-driven organization. So I'm driving building of this data-driven organization, which is all about building the culture of data culture and data literacy in the organization. So there's a whole lot of focus on using data, using analytics, using insights, using more and more of AI, machine learning, and so on. And then from a factory perspective, we have now kind of implemented some COVID solutions, basically, which you touched upon, Sunil. So we have now for violation of social distancing, it can automatically identify from the camera feeds, automatically identify people who don't seem to be wearing masks, and also temperature scanning, because that's a huge problem in the manufacturing, because when people enter, and all of a sudden at 8 o'clock when people enter the factory, it becomes very difficult for a person to be standing and then scanning the temperature. So we are now kind of doing a trial on the temperature scanning, and it's fairly successful, I would say, at this point in time. And this is also now getting into the other areas like trust-based authentication, right? We were using digital signatures. We are now looking at how do we kind of, because there are no papers hanging around now, and it's very important that there is a certain amount of trust and authentication that is built. So we are kind of scaling up our digital signature footprint. We are also now looking at, because we are a manufacturing organization and the major spend is on material procurement. So we are now working on a lot of spend analytics and sourcing analytics, because even if you were to knock off 0.25 or 0.5% or 1% of your total material spend, that itself would mean huge benefit for the organization. So overall, I would say digital transformation has become a mainstream subject in the organization. And you must have heard of this term called shadow IT, people talk of, where the individual departments and functions start scouting for technology. They start talking to vendors independently, even without the IT being involved. Now, I think that has now changed to, I don't no longer call it a shadow IT. It is called herd IT now. Or like herd immunity, I call this as herd IT, where the entire organization is now talking of using technologies. People are talking of digital, people wanting to understand more and more of analytics. They want to understand more and more the potential of AI and so on. So this is now herd IT in the organization.
Fantastic.
These
fantastic,
are kind of a summary of what we have done.
Interesting, Venkatesh. The 3 R's that you said, and you talked about the reset, which is there, and then the fact that you are now a data-driven organization. And very interesting when you said that whole digital culture, right? It kind of pervading through the whole organization. It's fantastic with all stakeholders involved. Fantastic. Thanks, Venkatesh. I have a couple of questions which I'll come back to you later. I'll move to Ravindra Barlingay. Ravindra, you represent Endurance Tech, presence in India and Europe. If I'm not mistaken, 9 plants in Europe. I think one of the largest aluminum die manufacturers in India, and also making a lot of suspension, transmission, and braking systems. So my question to you, Ravindra, is how has your organization coped with the COVID impact and specific digital transformation initiatives within the organization to help in your improvement in operational efficiency and reducing of cost? If you can just highlight that, that would be great. I'll come to the demand part later.
Thank you, Sunil, for the opportunity and for the SINGEX also. And thank you very much, participants and panelists. I will just go through what we have done in Endurance Technologies to cope up with COVID, and what may be the various areas that we have, you can say, addressed. So Endurance Technologies, we have continuously implemented and monitored the health advisories as issued by government and regulatory authorities, and to alleviate the impact of COVID-19 and its manufacturing and office locations. So basically, Endurance Technologies, you can say, it has 7 plants in Aurangabad in Maharashtra and some 4 plants in Pune, again in Maharashtra. So earlier, as per the directions issued by state and local authorities to contain the spread of COVID-19, we at Endurance, we decided to temporarily suspend manufacturing operations as per the government, you can say, regulations and laws to in the plants based out of Uttarakhand and Maharashtra. And at the same time, to ensure business continuity, office staff in these states have been advised work from home, like other organizations as well. So at Endurance, the labor are all based out of Aurangabad. So this is one very, very important aspect. So we do not have migrant laborers. So we didn't face any issue, especially on the labor side of it. So especially in the manufacturing and production, we didn't face any issue. So there was, you can say, absolutely a very good, you can say, availability of labor. So no issue. Only because of the governmental, you can say, policies, we had to, you can say, suspend temporarily the our manufacturing for some time. And naturally, we took care in the protective gear, the face shield, gloves, social distancing, then staggered shift schedules. At the same time, you can say, preparing a kind of disease preparedness and response plan. Also, we ensured to take caution in the use of equipment on the shop floor. Then redefined our plant layouts to reduce man-to-machine ratio. At the same time, we defined our SOPs, internal SOPs, to accommodate the post-COVID, you can say, working environment. So in addition to what Venkatesh has said, naturally, we went in for sanitization, body temperature checks, then travel restrictions, which was very important. Then increased use of video conferencing and business Skype to contain the novel coronavirus. So as Venkatesh was very rightly saying, so this was more so on the manufacturing or other areas, especially on the R&D side. We had to also ensure that the business continuities do happen. And we certainly had challenges, especially on the transfer of design files and also to manage our IPs, intellectual properties. Because how do we take care that people work from home and they are given proper laptops, the bandwidth has to be taken care, and at the same time, the intellectual property should not get, you can say, hacked or something like that. So those things also we had to take care of. At the same time, you can say we had to, we do have SAP and PLM in place at Endurance Technologies. And the challenge was definitely how do we connect the entire SAP and PLM on the manufacturing and supply chain? How do we make it process much more online? At the same time, how do we do the project reviews quite online, and at the same time get the right information at the right time? Then especially because some of the testing was happening at the plant, then how do we do the automation there, and how do we test those things remotely? How do we at the same time increase our process automation? So all those things definitely we have done there. Now, especially since Sunil, you asked me about two-wheelers perspective. So certain things that we have, you can say, definitely gained, as I said, was that there have been, you can say, a lot of governmental initiatives, and government has given a lot of subsidies from that angle. So definitely, if I'm looking at the rural to urban ratio, the rural ratio, you can say, is nearly 60% who buy the two-wheelers. And especially with coronavirus, COVID-19, it has got a boost because everybody wants to go on a personal, you can say, bike, or you can say personal car. So naturally, the entry-level bikes or the entry-level cars has got a big boost. At the same time, it has been, you can say, also helped with the good monsoon that has come up this year. So definitely, I can say that from an endurance perspective, because endurance has nearly 80% of, you can say, it supports the OEM for the two-wheelers. 80% of our business comes from two-wheelers. And especially from Bajaj or Hero MotoCorp, as I can see, the number of figures, especially of sales of two-wheelers, has near about come to normal. In this quarter, it will come to normal as last year. So I can say that the COVID-19 effect is nearly gone as far as the two-wheelers is concerned. Naturally, it has been supported by the government initiatives and policies. And so basically, I was also going through some of the reports of Hero MotoCorp as well as Bajaj, and they are, you can say, quite, you can say, happy about the way things are moving, especially this year in the entry barrier two-wheelers. That is what I can say. The demand has really come up quite well.
Great, and hopefully, because we are seeing the two-wheeler sales coming to nearly pre-COVID levels, hopefully we'll see those bikes being connected, Ravindra, through telematics, and maybe that definitely would be a good revenue stream for the two-wheelers, perhaps, right?
Yeah, definitely, because especially when we are speaking about the connectivity part of it, then there are certain technologies which are really accelerating the entire thing, and with the governmental, you can say, regulations of anti-lock braking systems and other things as well. So definitely that will get a boost, no doubt about it.
Right. So I'll I'll come back to you in the next round with a couple of questions, Ravindra. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Arun, you come with great experience in the auto industry. Earlier, the former MD of Nissan, worked in Maruti, Mahindra and Bajaj before. So, and you've been also on the, I think you're still on the board of quite a few companies. So if you can just share with us, what are your customers telling you? What are the broad industry trends that you're seeing from an automotive standpoint, Arun? You can share with the audience. That will be great. Arun? Arun?
Yeah. So, as somebody was mentioning this, the entire last 5 months has been a more roller coaster ride.
Yep.
He was mentioning that there's a novel which Charles Dickens wrote 140 years back. It was Tale of Two Cities. It was something the auto industry is going through in the last 4 months. It's the best of times. It was the worst of times. Age of hope. It is the age of despair. It is the spring of hope, and it is the winter of discontent. So, that's a lot of things which are happening. And you're talking of the 3 R's. You're talking of reincarnation today. People are talking renaissance. People are talking of rebirth. So there's a lot happening. But looking at this ecosystem, let's look at the 5 components of the ecosystem. One is the product development or the R&D. The other is the supply chain. The third is the OEMs or the manufacturers. Fourth is the dealers. And fifth, last but not least, the customers. So, the maximum disruption I have seen, which has happened, is in the supply chain. Because, we were approaching, or the industry was approaching, the transition from BS4 to BS6 in the beginning first week of March. And suddenly the brakes were put, and brakes were jammed absolutely. So there was a major disruption happened. So you had to close down plants, you had inventory, the schedules got disrupted. So all this caused a major transformation. And then you have to, even since the costs went up and you didn't have any work right from 15th of March to last week of April, when all the 6 centers of auto were closed, the big centers like Delhi, Bombay, Pune, these Bangalore. So then you had also to, even some people had to prune their manpower, and some people had to even go for reduction. So there was a major disruption, both at the manufacturers, the suppliers, and at the dealership side. But the suppliers had a bigger problem. But the moment it came from April to May, most companies could see a glimmer of hope. So, they said, all the suppliers were said, from unlock, you move to lock. So we have grown up on KBC, and we always grown lock kiya jaye, but nobody tells us how unlock kiya jaye. So unlock was a big challenge, because you have to conform to all the sanitation norms, you have to get clearances from the authorities, you have to talk to the other vendors, the tier 3, tier 4 vendors. And there was a constant pressure from manufacturers coming who had given you 0 schedules and now saying, okay, ramp up. So this has been a major transformation which is happening. So that's as far as supply chain. The manufacturers were in the same piece. Now coming to the dealers were waiting for this transformation to happen from BS4 to BS6. So maximum sales were expected to happen from, say, 20th March to 31st March to clear BS4 stocks, which were not much. But then everything got closed down. So they didn't know where to sell these stocks. So probably there was a Vahan where they could upload it. So this has happened a major part. But what I think is the positive part is, today I hear the schedules which have been given by the top car companies or top two-wheeler companies to their vendors. And Ravindra will bear me out. They have virtually given a schedule of the peak schedule for September. So we are trying to move. We have moved from, say, X to 0, 0 to medium, and now we are moving to extra large. So that's the transformation which is happening. And the dealers have their own challenges, because they had to remove their stocks of BS4. They had phenomenal manpower. Their workshop load came to nil, and customers were not walking in. And there was an increase in proofs of digital inquiries. So that's the major transformation. And we'll come to the second part, how digital has helped to recoup a lot of these things. So a lot of companies, I think, a lot of companies which were, they moved up on the value chain, I would say. There's a complete transformation of way of looking at things. Certain functions have become redundant. The importance of certain functions gone up. Digital in itself, we are not able to realize. And I was talking to people, they said the importance of digital, as was mentioned by other panels, is gone phenomenally up. But I think the auto industry has coped up with it fairly well. If you look at companies coming in the month of August to 80% of the production, leave aside heavy commercial vehicles where there's still a slowdown, or three-wheelers were still stood on. I'm talking of two-wheelers and passenger cars. It's a major change. And this is being done with a lot of limitations still in terms of manpower, in terms of supply chain. So I would say digital transformation has happened with a big leap. And somebody was mentioned, the chief digital officer has been COVID. And that is something, a major change has happened. But I believe the signs are positive. And people have learned new skills, have unlearned bad habits, and are looking at markets more positively. That's the way I look at it.
Right. And Arun, a few months back, you were on a webinar with IDC. And I think one of the questions which was posed to you was, on a scale of 1 to 10, if you look at auto industry, how would you rate the auto industry in terms of adopting digital? And if I recollect, Arun, you mentioned 3 or 4. So with the COVID impact, has this gone up maybe 3-fold, 4-fold now? Is it 7 or 8 now or more?
You're absolutely right. You caught me. I mean, the world is changing. A statement of 2 months is no longer relevant. We were at 2 and 3 in the industry. Yeah. But the industry is picked up. I would say they moved up to the level of 8. And hats off to the organization, hats off to the chief digital officers. There is a major transformation. People said, the auto industry is like a dinosaur. It moves very slowly. Look at the IC engines, 130 years the same. But this dinosaur, if you call it a dinosaur or making the elephants dance, it has danced well. The dinosaur has become more like a panther or you can say a cheetah. So that's the transformation which has happened.
So that dinosaur has got wheels now, moving really fast. Okay, thanks, Arun. Arpan, question to you is about the shared mobility space, and Zoomcar, of course, did get impacted ever since the lockdown hit us in March. So how did Zoomcar cope with that disruption, Arpan, ever since the pandemic has hit us? If you can share briefly, that would be great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sunil, for giving me this opportunity. And thank you for all the other panelists and attendees today. So obviously, when the lockdown started in March and April, it was an extremely challenging situation. And pursuant to the government directives, our business was completely shut down for the 6 weeks when we were at the height of the lockdowns, right? But even then, we were actually supporting some essential services during the first and second lockdown. So bankers, healthcare professionals, delivery companies which were making essential deliveries in groceries, pharmacy, etc. So we were actually using our vehicles to support them. When May came around, obviously, things started opening up gradually, etc. I think the biggest change which has happened from both a product as well as a process point of view at Zoomcar is that now we have baked in sanitization in every step of the process. So essentially, if earlier we were basically cleaning our cars once a day, now we do it after every trip, right? So the way our technology works is that whenever a car has to be touched by a fleet executive, a block is basically placed on the car, right? So the car is not available for half an hour or 1 hour till the executive can go over there. Now, earlier we were probably touching every car maybe once a day. Now, after every trip, we basically sanitize the entire car, mainly for the safety and security of our customers, right? Because that is paramount in our business. And when we say sanitization, we basically, touch the 32 key points which a customer will interact with in a car, right? So the steering wheel, gear, door handles, pocket door rest, every touch point is thoroughly clean. And obviously, as other panelists pointed out, we are also doing the same things in terms of, training our fleet executives, ensuring that their body temperatures are checked every day. They're following the highest standards of hygiene. They have all the PPE and equipment available, etc. with them, right? In fact, what we have instituted now, so we were anyway measuring the trip start feedback and trip end feedback for every trip that the customers were taking. Now we are explicitly asking for a cleanliness rating, right? And we have seen a phenomenal jump in that particular metric over the last two months. And I think that has definitely, resulted in very high customer satisfaction. And, we are hearing a very positive word of mouth in terms of, people who are taking trips with Zoomcar are saying that, the cars are well sanitized, etc. Right? Just taking, and of course, we have put in a bunch of incentives and penalties for our fleet executives themselves to make sure that, when a car is provided to a customer, it's in the cleanest possible state, right? And just if you take a step back, right, I think Zoomcar particularly is in the business of personal mobility, right? So there is no driver involved. So in that respect, actually, people are trusting us much more compared to shared mobility solutions like shared Olas or shared Ubers or ride hailing, where you are in touch with the driver, right? Here you're basically getting a clean car. You basically unlock it using the app without any assistance from anybody, and you take the car out, right? And definitely it's a much safer option than traveling in buses or any sort of public transport like metro. Definitely safer than trains and aeroplanes. As we know, the tourism industry is likely to be extremely subdued in this particular year, right? I think we don't expect it to come back to its BAU level at least in the next year. So we are seeing a lot of rise in local tourism, right? Where people want to pick up a car and go 100, 200 kilometers around the city and come back, right? And we are seeing a huge demand uptick over that. And I think I'm very fortunate to say that even in these tough times for the mobility business, Zoomcar has not had to lay off any of its regular employees, right? So I think that has been a huge achievement for us. And definitely now, as the unlocks are basically progressing really well, we are seeing our business pick up really fast with a lot of use cases coming, not just from short-term tourism use cases. Obviously, on the subscription side also, we are seeing a lot of rise. In fact, almost like a 400% rise in short-term subscriptions, like people subscribing to a car for a month or 2 months.
That's fantastic. And Arpan, I think you also launched e-scooters, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Right. So I think we had launched e-scooters actually almost 1.5 years back, right? And I think they were currently they are limited to particular areas of Bangalore. We are still experimenting a lot with the hardware, right? So I think we are not entirely happy with the way the hardware has shaped up, and we are talking to multiple OEMs and also trying multiple experiments on how do we get the exact hardware right. So that we can scale up the e-scooter business to much higher at a level where it basically make unit economic sense for us to run that business at a huge scale. But that's definitely a focus area for us going forward.
Great, thanks Arpan for sharing those thoughts. So I can, without any doubt in my mind, I can just go to the Zoomcar app and book a car for myself, right?
Absolutely.
Arpan? That's the message that you want to give everyone. Okay, great.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks. Venkatesh, coming to you. So you mentioned about this whole reset initiative. We're talking about crowdsourcing ideas within the organization, right? Are you also engaged with startups, Venkatesh? Is Ashok Leyland trying to work with startups on any specific areas? You're muted. Can you unmute yourself, Venkatesh?
Yes, Sunil, I think, you generally have the larger organizations working with large vendors. While we do that, but I think it's also important for us to recognize that these startups, and you have a lot of these startups who have very, very kind of niche services and boutique kind of services, which skills and knowledge which they bring in. I think it's very important for all the OEs to be tapping into the talent pool which is available with the startups, and not only the startups also. I think it's important, the time has come for us to also start very closely collaborating and working with the academia also when it comes to big data analytics or AI or machine learning. I think there's a lot of scope for larger organizations like us to be very closely collaborating with a lot of stakeholders who seem to be emerging in this whole ecosystem. So the answer is yes. Yes, we have now started, yes.
Okay, great. And Venkatesh, before I forget, the digital twin, that you're using within Ashok Leyland, if you can very, very briefly share what was the use case and why digital twin for that use case, Venkatesh?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this digital twin is part of our digital marketplace, which we established about 3 years ago in 2017, where we had 4 digital business platforms. They're doing pretty well in terms of revenue generation. May not be tons of money, but I think there is quite a lot of monetization we are looking at. This connected vehicle platform is one huge platform for us. We capture a huge amount of data because of the telematics devices which are fitted on all these vehicles. And now that we have migrated from BS4 to BS6, there's a lot more of data which is being captured from various ECUs, whether it's engine control ECU, whether it's body control ECU, and so on, or whether it's from the emission system, which is a very, very sophisticated emission systems now on the BS6. So that allows us to kind of apply a lot of algorithms. So building these algorithms itself is an IP for us now. Now we capture a lot of data from the vehicle, and then we have related to a vehicle. We call this as a cradle to coffin, right? From the time a vehicle is born, right, on the assembly line, till the time it is retired, right? The entire life cycle. I think now we seem to be in the perfect position to be capturing all the data. So when we capture all this data, right, it allows us to build now what we call it as a digital twin. So as part of the digital twin, what we have done is we have established what is called an Uptime Solution Center, which we launched. We did a press launch recently, right? Now this Uptime Solution Center is, if you visit our R&D center, you would find a huge screen like, a NASA or whatever. And then you would find all the vehicles which are there, about more than 150,000 vehicles. You can track each and every vehicle and then click on a particular vehicle and then find out what are the kind of alerts which are there on those vehicles, right, coming out. And then immediately you can remotely get in touch with you can diagnose the problem remotely. And we're now going a step ahead where, because the vehicle is now fully driven by data sets, all the ECUs are driven by data sets today. We are now in a position to, if there is a change to the data set that needs to be made, we are now able to do that remotely, flashing that data through the photo facility, flashing over the air updates, and then flash the right data set into the ECUs. And that's completely transforming the way we are now servicing the vehicle now. Otherwise, if we had to change the data set for, say, 800 vehicles involved in it, we had to send service engineers to hunt down all these 800 vehicles, carry the scan tools, and then make those changes. Today, we would be in a position to flash all that over the air. And we are able to now, using the digital twin, we are able to track the performance of each and every vehicle very, very granular level. And it kind of opens up new business models like, can you now offer uptime as a service now, right? So you allow the customer to focus on his business and say, hey, I take care of your vehicle, and then let us get into a kind of a SLA agreement in terms of the uptime. And I will use my Uptime Solution Center and the digital twin to ensure that his assets, those vehicles, you have the maximum uptime, and the wheels are always turning. So this is one huge kind of a transformation which is happening, riding on the mega trends, what you spoke of as connected, autonomous, shared, and electric. And connected is going to be the basic foundation, the base platform on which you would have all the other mega trends built on that.
Right. Okay. So you talked about uptime as a service, maybe even data as a service as well.
Absolutely.
Perhaps, right?
We are into data as a service already. We call that as DaaS. So, yeah.
Okay. That's great. Thank you, Venkatesh. Ravindra, over to you. So can you very briefly share any specific initiatives that are in place to address the demand side, the demand creation, things which are improving customer experience, largely which are growth related? So if you can broadly share, that will be great, Ravindra.
Yeah, so especially if we are looking at the demand side, internally in Endurance, what we have been doing is we are trying to, you can say, connect all the manufacturing, you can say, machines to the plants to a central kind of look, you can say, control system. At the same time, from a R&D perspective, naturally, from a user perspective as well as demand side. So what we are doing is all the designs are, you can say, getting, you can say, shared with the OEMs. We are discussing them online. At the same time, you can say the discussions happen remotely also. At the same time, we do have a test track at Endurance in Aurangabad, and all the, you can say, data that gets generated, immediately it gets analyzed also, and it is shared with naturally our OEMs. So naturally they absolutely understand as to what the vehicles are, what are the various parameters of the vehicles, how the test tracks are being designed, what are the you can say the different you can say parameters which they need to look at, and from those perspective, naturally you can say they perfectly understand as to when these particular projects or products are going to come out, and definitely it will help us in the boosting of the demand. So I will say from a total, you can say a bird's eye view, from a manufacturing to R&D to the test track to the supply chain and everything is getting, you can say, transformed digitally. At the same time, the data is getting generated, which based on what data has to be, you can say, shared, those data are absolutely getting shared with the OEMs, naturally increasing their demand. So they perfectly know when these projects or products are coming out, and accordingly it will boost their demand, and naturally it gives a boost to not only our marketing teams but also our aftermarket teams as well.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Ravindra. So Arun, I have a two-part question for you. First thing is regarding dealerships. Are the dealers today geared up to use digital channels to kind of communicate with their clients, trying to sell it? And any specific changes that they need to make from a skilling standpoint? Are you going to see maybe use of AR and VR kind of solutions perhaps to give that experience to a customer before they actually buy a vehicle?
So, dealership, the way the dealership model exists was already under a lot of stress and strain. It was a high cost, whether in terms of infrastructure, in terms of working capital, and in terms of manpower. And this was hit very badly. But I think the dealership model has emerged stronger. The companies are also now co-working with dealers or co-creation, how to make it more asset light and more productive. And if you look at the 4 pillars which they are being worked on, which is going on, I think digital is major help in this. One is how to improve revenues with the same resources. Second is how to reduce cost. And third was how to reduce transmission losses. Because we have this typical challenge in India of how much power is produced till the time it reaches the I2R is very high, the transmission losses. And fourth was how to cut down on the time lag or the time delay. I think digital has worked a lot. Now coming to the dealers, see, one thing which happened is the digital inquiries, which were between 15 to 20%, have gone up to 40 to 45% in dealerships. And even in upcountry areas, it's about 35 to 40%. But the challenge the dealers had, and there was a lot of skepticism. A lot of people said, "Sir, digital inquiries are all youngsters who sit on their computers, they type in anything, they're not serious." So nobody took digital inquiries seriously. But I think there is a different mindset. Digital inquiries, because that is going to be the bread and butter, it's being looked differently. And people are realizing with technology, even you look at a sale of a vehicle, right from the time when a customer has an inquiry in his mind to the time the vehicle is delivered, there are 25 steps. Today, it is possible that 18 to 19 steps can be covered through the digital medium. Starting from inquiry generation, starting from even highlighting the rates or even the negotiation of the rates, you have bots which are being utilized, starting from time when uploading of documents of the customers for which they get finance, and 5-6 finance companies then see the documents and see what they can offer. Then even video calling or video conferencing in terms of the finance company dealing with customers, so that how they can reach a conclusion, and then even the customer interaction point which is happening. So there is a major change which is happening right from the inquiry stage. Leave aside the test drive, which has to be physical, the choosing of the color or the variant, sometimes the showroom has to be visited or the vehicle has to be brought, and ultimately the delivery piece. But a lot of steps which are happening are dramatically changing, and dealers are realizing it. The other thing where I think artificial intelligence has a major role to play is how do you differentiate, how do you separate the wheat from the chaff in digital inquiries, from the serious to the non-serious inquiries. And I think there are various tools now available, and companies are looking at it, and even dealers are looking very aggressively. I talk to dealers, they said, we want to digitize, we want to do better. How do you judge from those inquiries which are the ones which are serious and which are the ones who are time passers? So there are probably tools available looking at his background, the type of inquiries he puts, the based on the first response which he gets. So it's a major transformation happening. Second is this model of dealership is becoming asset light, because people are realizing they don't need these big showrooms. If so many few customers are going to visit it, do you need these Taj Mahal? Somebody said they are the Taj Mahals. Or do they become like Bibi Ka Maqbara in Aurangabad? Taj Mahal is still shining with glories. So even manufacturers are looking at making the model asset light. And I don't know, this is something to do with COVID or due to digital. The stocking norms, which were at dealership 4 to 6 weeks was norm, people are talking of 3 to 4 weeks, and it's being implemented. So I think in reality, if you look at it, there may be a lot of pains at the initial point of time, but there is part of it. And now companies are talking a new thing. Do you need 1,000 footprints in terms of infrastructure in showroom to reach customers? Is there a way of digital, how to interact with them, and then you reach them at the final time? So these are the things which are happening. And even in workshops, for all the connected information which is coming across, how to get preventive maintenance, how to identify what is required in the vehicle. And what has happened is people have started looking at the data. The data existed, but nobody looked at the data with a magnifying glass or with a microscope. Today, I was talking to a dealer. He said, "Sir, reinsurance, insurance which is done after the first year," he says, "my percentage has gone up from 50 to 70% because I started looking at my customer database. When do they need insurance? Can I opportune time? What is something which I can offer them? What do they require? A zero depreciation." So, this whole business of dealership, customers, and even the manufacturing interface is, and a lot of things, these technologies existed. It's not that they didn't exist. They were either being misutilized or underutilized or not utilized properly. So this transformation is happening, and I think the digital role will only improve because people are seeing clearly revenue maximization, cost reduction, and move with efficiency. Cases in terms from inquiry to delivery is happening in 15 days, which used to take 30, 35 days. So I see a new dawn. It's a new dawn of a new era. It's still a misty dawn, but it's in the right direction. That's the way I look at it.
Right. Thanks, Arun. Very quick question, Arun. In terms of people buying cars online, I think they'll have to comply with e-commerce guidelines, Consumer Protection Act. There are issues around information security, data privacy, and all this stuff. So, any roadblocks that you see when it comes to people buying cars online?
Online, the challenge is in India, 70% customers, there's still a touch and feel of the vehicle. Yep. Test drive, looking at the color which is on your screen is very different from the color you see physically. The variants, the attributes of the product which I highlighted, probably when you go to the showroom. So I believe you won't have the straight, from showroom, from house to straight to delivery. But what I mentioned is the number of steps which were a dampener or which can now become accelerator in terms of digital is happening. But at the choosing stage and at the final delivery stage, it's going to happen. But a lot of steps, a lot of things which were happening on ground or on face-to-face will get converted to digital. But 100% e-commerce, like buying a book or buying a airline ticket, buying your grocery, that is, I still believe is a far, is like a mirage. It's not a reality. And probably it's not required because this is a high value purchase. There's a lot of emotion things which is part of it.
Thank you. Thank you, Arun. Arpan, now in terms of attracting customers, improving customer experience, how is Zoomcar leveraging the power of data analytics to be able to offer really customized offers, and all that? So if you can just share, how do you leverage analytics, AI, etc., Arpan?
Right. No, I think in terms of, obviously we've always been sort of a tech first and data-led company, right? And we consistently kind of look at how customer behavior is changing. So in fact, we accelerated a couple of products during the COVID situation, right? So we already had like a Zoomcar or commute product where people can essentially book cars for 3, 5, 10 days. We also have launched a product called Free Float, which is essentially one way within the city. So you can open an app, find a car near you, take that car around the city and drop it anywhere in the city, right? So this is the first time that we are doing it for 4-wheelers. Obviously, there are other companies like Bounce and Vogo, etc., which have done for 2-wheelers, and we also have done it for 2-wheelers. This is the first time that we are doing it for 4-wheelers, right? And essentially, as ride hailing, etc., people started preferring them a little less because of the safety and hygiene concerns. We are pretty confident about the Free Float basically taking off in a big way in the coming months. In fact, we have started the pilot in Bangalore itself, right? So and of course, then we have the subscription products where, as I mentioned, the customer preference suddenly shifted. In fact, it did not shift. The right way to kind of look at it is that we started attracting a lot of customers who wanted to go for short-term subscriptions like 1 or 2 months. So we have always had that product. I think the minimum tenure earlier was like 3 months going all the way to 24. Now we also provide like 1 to 2 month subscriptions, and we saw like a 400% spike in the demand due to COVID, right? So that's one part of kind of looking at how customer behavior is changing and modifying the products in real time. The other thing that we basically do, and it's interesting that you brought it up, is because Zoomcar is making a very serious play in the B2B business, right? So we don't want to be a purely B2C company. We want to offer our entire tech stack as a complete B2B platform as a service or mobility as a service solution to multiple companies, right? And one part of it is obviously a lot of telematics and the connected part of the car, right? So we're building a lot of those technologies and offering it to fleet operators both within India and outside. And some of the specific technologies that we are working on are driver score and predictive maintenance, right? So, and both of these have a very huge AI/ML component. And for us, at least driver score is not a theoretical concept, right? Because we actually use it on our own platform to influence driving behavior and maximize the asset life, right? Which is basically a pretty big need for fleet operators, right? And we are basically now offering that as a solution to anybody who basically wants to use it. So driver score is one part. The other is predictive maintenance, right? We are basically looking at multiple parameters coming out of the CAN devices in terms of how the engine is performing, how the clutch and gearbox are performing, how's the battery performing, etc., and being able to diagnose problems before they happen, right? And being able to provide that kind of visibility to fleet operators or end customers, etc., so that instead of going for an expensive replacement, they can take corrective action much more in advance, right? So that's definitely the other part of it. The third way we are basically trying to become a B2B company is that the whole subscription technology stack, we are also offering it to all the OEMs, right? Whoever are in the passenger vehicle or car vehicle market in India, where we're saying that, hey, we can provide the entire operational as well as the technology stack. People don't have to build it from scratch, and then customers can directly subscribe to cars for, as I said, starting from 1 month all the way to 24 months, and we are seeing very good traction over there and a lot of interest from OEMs themselves. And the biggest advantage for Zoomcar is that people who subscribe to cars don't have to keep the car for the entire 30 days, right? Because a typical customer will probably drive it for like 10-15 days. And whenever the car is not available, she can actually list it back on the Zoomcar platform for short-term rental to other customers, right? So this directly ties in back to our the sharing mobility theme that we have for this particular panel, right? And she can actually reduce her subscription cost by anywhere from 25% to 50% whenever she's not using the car. So I think that, so basically the idea is to use both AI and ML to develop like proprietary technologies that we can offer to other companies, as well as using that data to modify our product portfolio in very, very short time.
Right, and just a quick follow-up to you, Arpan. Are you also trying to build a larger ecosystem? While customers, whether B2B or B2C, can access the Zoomcar platform for subscribing to car rental, but are you trying to bring others also onto the platform? For example, a customer might want infotainment, or or maybe tie up with some restaurant chain. So are you trying to kind of get the other players also part of this? Arpan?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think on the renter side, we have already started doing some parts of it, right? So, when you basically take a car at Zoomcar, we have like a software module called as a Trip Buddy, where you can currently you can do a bunch of things like extending your trips or buying more kilometers. But absolutely, the idea is that we can also provide you entertainment using that same thing, right? Where we are trying to tie up with companies which have rights for music streaming, etc., and then figuring out how do we basically bring it on. So similarly for doing more local alliances, right? So because we know where the customer is going and which part of the country they're in, so we can basically customize and personalize the experience quite a bit in alliance with local partners. So we are basically considering multiple options over there on how we basically tie up intelligently with, let's say, restaurant chains or hotels or any other service providers, and provide customized and personalized offers to our customers in real time when they are on the trip.
Okay, great. Thanks, Arpan. So now we'll take questions from the audience, and I have a question for Natarajan, Venkatesh Natarajan. This question is from Swapnil Jadhav to you, Venkatesh. Two questions actually. On analytics, how is Ashok Leyland leveraging it for front end? And secondly, post-COVID, what is your view on demand factors for truck and business segment? Ashok, Venkatesh.
I think the first question on how are we leveraging AI, I think for the front end, I think the primary focus of the digital transformation is to see how do we kind of enable the front end and everything related to customer experience. And I keep saying that technology and digital for the front end is like the arms and ammunitions, and we provide the kind of an Air Force cover for the front end people who seem to be fighting battle. So 15 years ago, this was a two-player market, and today you have multiple players now in the commercial vehicle segment. So technology plays a very key role. And AI, for example, I'm saying we have a very well-oiled kind of a front-end process, everything on the mobile, which includes the calls which the sales guy makes to the customer, all those data is captured. And more importantly, where we use AI is on the beat plan. So every week we provide a beat plan to our front-end dealer sales executives, right? And there are thousands of guys. And we run AI algorithms in the back end to find out who are those customers who are most likely to be buying a vehicle. So it's basically a propensity analysis which we do. And then such of those customers who have a very high propensity, we push the names of those customers on the top of that list. So when that sales guy is going through the beat plan, you would find that he may not know that there is an AI algorithm which has recommended this customer's name, and that's pushed to the top of the list. But he gets it right on top of the list. And naturally, since it is on the top of the list, the tendency is for him to go and then talk to that customer or get in touch with that customer. That's one example. We also do, for example, a churn analysis. In fact, we use various algorithms there. Initially, we were using gradient boosting algorithm, ML algorithm. I think now we use random forest, whatever. We do a churn analysis to find out, based on the data which is there in the job cards when the customer visits our workshop, and then find out what is the customer likely to move away from buying our vehicles, right? So we kind of sense that from the data using, again, neural network there. We use feed-forward backpropagation algorithm here to find out who are those customers who are likely to move out of Ashok Leyland. We kind of flag this up to the front-end guys to say, hey guys, I think it's important that you meet this customer, find out whatever his grievances are. And that has really given us quite a lot of benefit in terms of ensuring the customer does not really move out of Ashok Leyland. A couple of areas. But we use a lot of AI using the connected vehicles data for consequential failure analysis. And as Arpan was saying, in terms of identifying or predicting some of these failures like a battery failure or a clutch failure, all this is done through AI.
Okay, great.
The second question in terms of
demand. Demand.
Demand. I think, and I think, a lot of speakers have spoken about it. I think commercial vehicle segment would be one of those segments which will take some time for the demand to pick up, probably after the passenger car and the two-wheelers. But we are hopeful. I think, if you really look at what has been what's happening in the last 2-3 months in terms of the economy, I'm sure I think this market will bounce back and overall business will bounce back, and it will bounce back and rebound very, very strongly going forward.
So we should be bouncing back with a vengeance, hopefully.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's not a vengeance. I think we will bounce back. The entire automotive industry will bounce back very strongly, I guess.
Right. Thanks, Venkatesh. This question is to Ravindra. So Ravindra, the question is from Naveen Thapa, and he's asking you, how does the industry see IIoT impacting the top line of automotive component suppliers? I think it's a very broad question. He wants a more industry perspective. You can share. Auto component suppliers. We are on mute, Ravindra.
Yeah. I can.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah, please go ahead.
Great. So thank you for the question. Definitely, you can say IIoT is impacting the top line, especially because it improves the efficiency heavily, at the same time brings in a lot of productivity, at the same time real time, you can say, information on your fingertips as to what is happening at the different locations, at different plants, at different functions. It gives you the real time information. So naturally the decision making processes, they improve heavily, and definitely it reduces, you can say, the go to market. When it reduces the go to market, naturally the products are launched much better, much faster in a way, and it will lead to, you can say, improving your top line, that is the revenues, definitely, I feel.
Okay, great. Now there have been a lot of questions on e-vehicles, and I'm going to come to you, Arun, because you just spoke to ET very recently. So maybe, I know you spoke for about 30 minutes, but maybe if you could just condense it and give a short 3 to 4 minute executive summary of what the synopsis of your talk was as far as EV, Arun.
The first part is that EV, this transformation change from the IC to EV has to happen. There is no two opinion on that. It started in the world, but our pace is slow. Only 2 things I want to emphasize. The ecosystem we have the FAME 2 policy. Probably we raised the bar too high. The criteria we put in terms of vehicles which are eligible for the benefits of FAME 2, whether in terms of their charge, whether in terms of their range, whether in terms of their maximum speed, in terms of the indirection, was very high. So what happened last year, 85% of the two-wheelers could not get the benefit of the FAME 2 policy. And in passenger vehicles, we only put it for commercial application, which is hardly 10% of the market. So we have a very odd situation. People thought that the budget was insufficient it was 8,500 crores for 3 years. But the utilization, if I have to take on a pro rata basis, is not even 10 to 15%. Second is there is a lot of concern still on the charging infrastructure, although we say the charging can be put up anywhere, but the charging 3,000 charging points, independent fast charging points, are still to see the light of the day. Third thing is what Delhi government has done, and that's a very positive move. Beyond the ex-showroom price, which does incorporate the GST, you have road tax, you have registration, you have ease of commercial vehicle registration, you have also scrappage. These benefits have to start flowing immediately. Some states do it, some don't do it. Scrappage policy is in the back burner for 3 years, you have to do it. The fourth is, there's a lot of confusion because a large component of EV, which is the battery, still we are dependent on China. So now this political issues going on China, people are unclear whether we'll have we will be allowed to import, or should we go for a different country to import, whether it is Japan, whether it's Korea. So this air has to be cleared also. And a lot of manufacturers are still, I would say, I'm talking of the traditional manufacturers, startups are more aggressive. They are somewhat having a wait and watch policy. That's why in two-wheelers, from the mass players, you don't find any big EV coming in. I mean, they've announced it, but it's not seen the light of the day. And in passenger vehicles, it's come in that range of 15-25 lakhs. So that ecosystem has to change. So that push from the government, whether you need to give higher subsidies since the budget is not utilized, a big confidence on the charging infrastructure, which is still a concern. We have very few infrastructure, that's a problem. And that customer education. We need to give a lot of SOPs, which are value-added SOPs in the initial part. Like in London, they give you for charge, if you go to zone 1, 10 pounds is the parking, it is free. So can you get some delight factors in terms of priority parking, priority weightage, clear reimbursement on financing, putting a pressure on financiers that to finance 80 to 90%. So these are such steps. So we are somewhat in a vicious cycle. I would say, I won't want to use the term vicious cycle, but there is enough opportunity on a virtuous cycle. So companies, manufacturers, auto ancillaries, you can say even the government has to co-create and work strongly. Otherwise, that momentum which we started on the ecosystem EV, it is slowing down. And somehow a lot of hand-holding is required because shared mobility is a challenge. So these are the way things I look at it. But these are challenges I'm sure we can be overcome and we can move forward. But there is a strong, direction and a strong step co-creation required to move positively.
Right. And I think we're also seeing a lot of governments also being very proactive, right? I think Tamil Nadu government last year and earlier this year, Telangana government came up with EV policy, attracting manufacturers. Yeah.
See, there is difference between announcement and pronouncements and action. Somehow a number of states, I don't want to take names of states, the pronouncements have not been followed up by action on ground. So, I want to see on ground what's happened. So the only way is, they say management PDCA, plan, do, check, act. What's on ground? So if it's very great, but it's not implemented on ground, it's like a great park connection just come to a house, but you can't light the bulb. So that's what simply talking on that.
Right. So I'd like to also get perspectives from Venkatesh and Ravindra and maybe even Arpan on this. Venkatesh, anything to add to what Arun said? Any different perspective that you have on EV adoption? And you're on with here.
I couldn't agree more with what Arun said on the EV. I think policies, government policies, though a lot of announcements, I think, yes, I think will fall in place. I think, and post-COVID, I think probably EV would get a kind of a boost moving forward. And this would cover all segments of the automotive industry, whether it's a two-wheeler, passenger cars, and
I also do agree with Arun on the EV policy, which has been formulated and which has been announced and pronounced, as he was saying. So definitely on ground, a lot of things have to be done. But what I feel is EV is going to be the future. That is for sure. Especially looking at the different oil import bills or looking at the pollution or environmental aspects. At the same time, other technical challenges have been taken care of, like the range and other aspects. So at the same time, lightweighting of the vehicle. So I think definitely EV has a great future.
Right. Thanks, Ravindra. I think last year, the total percentage of EV vehicles as a percentage of the overall vehicles was just 1%, I think, in 2019.
Not even 0.6.
It's less than 1. Okay, right. Arpan, do you have any e-vehicles on the Zoomcar platform? Are you seeing customers wanting to rent out an e-vehicle?
Right. Right. So yeah, as you mentioned earlier, we do have e-scooters and we have a few
Okay.
cars which are electric cars. But I think on even the way we look at it, I think it's going to be a gradual one, right? Like the government has, there's a lot of announcements, but there's no action on the ground. So even we feel that it will probably start with two-wheelers and three-wheelers, and cars are at least 2 to 3 years away from mass adoption. So although we do have like a few electric vehicles and some people do subscribe to them, but it's more of the enthusiast crowd, right, which basically wants to try out an electric vehicle before actually making a purchase. So yeah, we do see some of that behavior, but it's still very small.
Too small. Okay. Okay. Good. Okay. There's a question for Arun Malhotra, and Arun, this is what area can you point out to be a great opportunity for a startup in the current scenario? And I guess this is more for startups wanting to play in the auto industry space. So you want to address that?
So, startups, since there's a dramatic transformation happening in the marketplace in terms of dealers, there are a lot of things you have to understand the dealer model, because it's a very inefficient model which has been running for more than a century. And it is ripe for digitization, even what has been done. So if you understand the dealer piece or the customer dealer interaction piece, there are a lot of opportunities which are working, which is there. And dealers want to do it, and companies also want to do it. So that's one piece which can be focused very strongly. The second piece, which I think startups is, a lot of people in product development are talking of virtual simulation, virtual testing, and it's being tried even. Now, can you take it to the next stage? Because today in the auto industry, the product conception to the product introduction is about 4 to 5 years. That's the best part. How with digital, IoT, artificial intelligence, all these machine learning, how can this virtual, you can say simulation or virtual, creation or 3D can be done? Because that is also already something happening, but just happening at a snail's pace. So if startups can look at the R&D piece, product development piece, and there are so many companies, India is still a very big design and development center. Even companies which don't have much of presence in India have major design development centers in India. If you can look at that piece in terms of adding efficiency, adding speed, and reducing cost, I would say it's a great opportunity. And third, last not least, in the supply chain, which is still very complex, how do you deal with tier 1, tier 3? So I think for startups, there is something you have to look at a particular opportunity or a problem, identify it, work on it, and give solutions. Because startups have that speed, that agility, which probably big companies don't have. So I think it's a great opportunity.
Okay, great. Thanks, Arun. Question to Venkatesh Natarajan. What's your plan to educate the dealers about the vast digitization that is permeating the automotive industry? Did you get it, Venkatesh? What is your plan? Yeah.
That's the first thing there, because if you look at the automotive industry, I think focusing on dealers and digitizing at the dealer end has been a priority. And I would say, at least in our organization, it's been there for about 15 years now, right? Ever since we went about putting in place your dealer management systems and so on. So that's been a continuous journey today. And if I really look back today, I think dealers have also come a long distance in terms of adopting and embracing technology. And apart from that, I think there are very, very structured programs which are in place. And I can very proudly say that even during the work from home and during the lockdown, there have been a lot of virtual dealer trainings which have taken place on some of these new niche technologies in terms of how do they use the connected vehicle platform, right? How do we start looking at information? How do you use those insights and then start educating and bringing that awareness in terms of using more and more of insights and data? So that's been a continuous journey, and dealers are only too willing to kind of invest and then have their people trained on these new emerging technologies. I think that somewhere got into the DNA of the dealership. I mean, it may not be 100% complete, but that process has started and well on its way, chugging along very well, I would say, at this point.
All right. Thanks, Venkatesh. And another question for you, Venkatesh. Any plans of autonomous vehicles for Indian consumption from Ashok Leyland in the future?
No, I think very general answer for that is if you look at case connected autonomous shared electric, while there's a lot of work which is going on globally also, from an Indian perspective, autonomous would take some time, right? Especially if you're not talking of level 5 autonomous. But as I see, I think there could be a lot of ADAS systems coming in. And as I see, government is also quite active now. They started mandating that all vehicles carrying passengers should have, tracking devices. Now they've come out with AS 140 regulations. And it's only a matter of time before the government really starts getting into more and more of these ADAS systems like driver drowsiness systems, collision avoidance systems, and so on. I think they will start mandating this moving forward, is my guess, moving forward, all leading to the autonomous vehicles. There's a lot of infrastructure development in the country that has to happen before you really get into that. And that's a long way off. We need to get our roads and our traffic lights in place first. Right.
Right. Yeah. And Arun, I recollect last year during the Indian Mobile Congress, you are moderating this whole session on autonomous vehicles, and I happen to be one of your panelists. And one question that you posed towards the end is, from an autonomous vehicle readiness perspective, as a country, 5 years from now, you asked each of the panelists, how do you, on a scale of 1 to 10, from the least probability, the most probability. I'm going to put all of you all on the spot now. So 5 years from now, Arun, I'm taking this question again from you, and I'll start with you. So 5 years from now, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would be your rating? 2, 3, 8, or 9? 2 or 3 is the least probability, 8 or 9 is the highest probability of autonomous vehicles on the road.
4 from my side. 3 to 4, I would put it 4.
4 from your side. Okay. Venkatesh?
I think I would go with Arun. I think it's probably 3 to 4. Probably I'll take a 3, I guess.
3, okay. Ravindra?
When I'm looking at autonomous vehicles, I don't see technical challenges per se. So especially L0 to L3, it is perfectly fine. Even L4, L5 is achievable and it has been done. But especially from a governmental perspectives and other, you can say, aspects, I will go for 3. Seriously.
3. Okay. Yep. And Arpan?
I would also go for 3. I think none of those systems are trained for Indian roads right now. So I think we're still
So we have a very highly pessimistic set of panelists when it comes to autonomous vehicles.
Not pessimistic, say pragmatic and realistic.
Pragmatic and realistic. Okay, understood. Right. Okay, got right words, Arun. There's a question which has come in for Arpan. Arpan, this question is, how is data privacy not compromised when it comes to personal mobility, especially in case of Zoomcars? So if you can address that question, it will be great.
Right. No, I think we have like a very strong silos, right, in terms of maintaining customers' data privacy. So right from the login information, personal information, etc. I think we have adopted data security as almost like an organization-wide goal to make sure that none of those data is ever leaked. Even on the payment systems, the payment information, we have the highest level of security, and only certified engineers who are qualified to work on those systems are basically allowed to do that, right? Now, obviously, our platform allows you to subscribe a car, and then essentially also allows people to take the same cars out for the short-term rentals. And there is complete sort of there's a wall which basically separates these two people, right? So essentially what you can do is that if you have subscribed to a car, you can park it by the roadside or near your home, etc. The other person can come and pick it up. No data is ever exchanged between the parties. And even the pickup and drop happens entirely through the app, right? So there is no key handover as such. You can just leave the key inside the car, unlock the car with your app, and then when you finish the trip, you can do the same, right? So essentially, the people don't even have to meet. So there's no sort of breach of privacy in that particular way. And of course, on the data sharing itself, we basically don't allow any data to be shared between subscribers and renters, right? And I think as we kind of evolve our B2B and PaaS strategy, those will be essentially almost tenants of our IT system, where, like, for example, if one OEM is running a subscription business on our stack, and then there is another OEM running, there'll be no sort of data exchange between them, right? Like there'll be completely like different partitions in the cloud where the data will be stored, right? So data privacy is extremely critical for us as an organization.
Right. Thank you, Arpan. We have more questions on Q&A, but we just don't have the time to take those questions. But what we can do is we can perhaps use the interchange platform. So those who have asked those questions will perhaps get the panelists to address those questions offline. We have completely run out of time. So at this point in time, I would like to thank each of the 4 panelists for taking time to share your thoughts and perspectives. It's been fantastic learning for me, and even I'm sure for the audience. Nitya, over to you. You have any poll questions that you want to take before we wrap up?
That's right. Thank you, Mr. David, and thank you, panelists, for taking out time to share your experiences and learnings today. It has indeed been an insightful session. I request the audience to take a moment to complete the poll that is on your screens right now to provide feedback on today's session and share your ideas for future ones. Your feedback is extremely important for us to bring more and more such sessions to you. Details on joining the Interchange platform for deeper discussions will soon be on your screens and will also be a part of the email that you will receive after this session. I encourage you to join and engage with the like-minded community and take over any questions that were unanswered today. Look out for details on the upcoming sessions on our IIoT India website and social media pages. And do not forget to join our Interchange community for continuing the conversation and dialogue spinning off from today's session. Once again, thank you for joining us. We hope you found it useful. We look forward to seeing you in Interchange after this session and having you at future sessions. Please do not forget to submit your poll. Take care and have a good day ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we log off?